December 7th, 1941, 7:48 a.m. Aboard the USS Arizona, anchored in the glassy waters of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The morning sun glints off the steel hulls of Battleship Row, where sailors scrub decks and sip coffee, the tropical breeze carrying the faint scent of salt and diesel. Then a low hum builds from the northwest, like distant thunder rolling in from Oahu's mountains. You can almost feel the vibration in your chest as the first wave of shadows streaks across the sky. Zeros. Mitsubishi A6M Zeros, their red rising suns flashing like blood on wings. Torpedoes slice into the water, explosions rip through the calm, and in an instant, paradise becomes inferno. Alarms wail as anti-aircraft guns stutter to life, but it's too late for many. Lieutenant Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, leading the strike from the carrier Akagi, radios back in triumph, "Tora, tora, tora," the code for complete surprise. Below, on the Arizona, flames erupt from the forward magazine, a cataclysmic blast that hurls men into the oil-slicked sea like rag dolls. Battleships Oklahoma and West Virginia list and capsize, their crews trapped in flooding compartments, pounding on bulkheads in the dark. Ford Island's hangars crumple under bombs, P-40 Warhawks incinerated on the tarmac before pilots can scramble. Far across the Pacific, aboard the flagship Nagato in Hiroshima Bay, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto paces the bridge, his face etched with the weight of a gambler who's just rolled the dice. Yamamoto, the Harvard-educated strategist with a missing finger from the Russo-Japanese War, had orchestrated this audacious blow. He knew America's vast industrial might, the factories in Detroit and shipyards in Norfolk that could churn out weapons like no other nation. "We have awakened a sleeping giant," he'd warned his superiors months earlier, and filled him with a terrible resolve. Yet here he was, pressing the attack with 6 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shikaku, Zuikaku, launching 353 aircraft in 2 waves. Zeros strafing runs, Nakajima B-5N Kates drop torpedoes modified for shallow harbors, Aichi D-3A Vals dive bomb with precision honed in secret drills off Kagoshima. The devastation is swift, merciless. 8 battleships damaged or sunk, 188 aircraft destroyed, over 2,400 Americans dead in under 2 hours. Oil fires blacken the sky, the acrid smoke choking survivors as they drag wounded comrades through flaming waters. But Yamamoto's victory tastes bittersweet. He stares at the incoming reports, his mind racing. The American carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga, were absent, out on maneuvers. No decisive knockout. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant," he mutters again to his staff, the words hanging like a prophecy in the humid air. As the last planes return to their flat tops, nursing bullet holes in low fuel, the Imperial Japanese Navy steams away, leaving a harbor in ruins. But in Yamamoto's gut, a seed of doubt takes root. What if this wasn't the end of America's Pacific Fleet, but the spark of its rebirth? The world reels. In Washington, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addresses a stunned Congress the next day, his voice steady over the radio. A date which will live in infamy. Mobilization surges, recruitment lines snake around blocks, factories shift to war footing overnight. Yamamoto had studied America, played poker with its officers in the 1920s, understood its spirit. He pushed for the strike to cripple the U.S. before it could interfere with Japan's conquests in Southeast Asia, oil from Dutch East Indies, rubber from Malaya. But as cables confirm the toll, he confides to an aide, "We can run wild for 6 months or a year, but after that, I have utterly no confidence." Back in Pearl's chaos, divers cut into sunken hulls, rescuing trapped sailors who tap Morse code on pipes. The USS Nevada beached but defiant, her guns still firing at retreating shadows. Ensign Joe Taussig Jr. loses a leg but survives. Stories like his fuel the rage.
Yamamoto's plan, brilliant in execution, had bought time, but at what cost? As the sun sets on the smoking wreckage, a quiet resolve builds among the survivors. They patch what they can, vowing payback. Little do they know, the giant is stirring, its factories humming, its shipyards awakening. And Yamamoto, he senses the storm brewing, a reversal he dared not fully admit. But the dice are cast. What horrors would this awakening unleash?
Waves lap against the burning hulks of Akagi and her sisters, the Pacific claiming them in oily pyres as rescue destroyers pluck survivors from the debris-strewn sea. It's June 5, 1942, and aboard the Yamato, Yamamoto slumps in his cabin, the weight of defeat pressing like the humid air of the tropics. Reports trickle in via Morse code, Nagumo's fleet shattered, over 3,000 Japanese sailors lost, including aces who'd strafed Pearl just months ago. He issues the retreat order, his voice steady, but his mind a whirlwind. The Aleutians' capture, Attu and Kiska Islands, feels hollow, a sideshow to the catastrophe at Midway. American PBYs circle overhead, scouting for stragglers, while Spruance's carriers withdraw cautiously, ammo depleted but victorious. Ensign Gay, the sole survivor of Torpedo 8, hides under his life raft, watching Hiryu slip beneath the waves, Zeros ditching nearby. Back in Hawaii, jubilation ripples through Pearl's command centers. Nimitz cables Washington. Pearl Harbor has now been partially avenged. But the giant's full wrath is just beginning. Shipyards accelerate. New Essex-class carriers like USS Essex and Intrepid slide down ways in Newport News, their decks designed for hordes of Hellcats in Avengers. Aircraft plants in California spit out F-6F Hellcats, rugged fighters that will outclimb and outgun the Zero. The Marine Corps swells with recruits, training on mock islands for the grueling hops ahead. Guadalcanal beckons, the first offensive thrust. In August, the 1st Marine Division under Major General Alexander Vandegrift storms ashore on the Solomon Islands, clashing with Japanese forces in steaming jungles. You can almost taste the mud and malaria, hear the crack of Type 99 rifles amid the vines. Yamamoto regroups at Truk, his combined fleet licking wounds. He dispatches reinforcements to Guadalcanal, destroyers running the Tokyo Express under cover of night, unloading troops and supplies amid naval brawls in the slot. The Battle of Savo Island sees Japanese cruisers under Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa ambush Allied ships, sinking 4 in a nighttime melee of torpedoes and searchlights. But America's industrial edge bites back. Henderson Field, captured on Guadalcanal, becomes a thorn, its wildcats harrying Japanese convoys. Yamamoto commits carriers Ryujo and Zuikaku to the fray, but in the Eastern Solomons clash, Ryujo burns under Enterprise's bombs, her planes scattered. Night after night, battleships like Washington trade salvos with Kirishima in Iron Bottom Sound, the seafloor littered with wrecks. By November, Guadalcanal turns decisive. Japanese evacuation, Operation KE, leaves the island to the Marines, a Pyrrhic victory, costing Yamamoto dearly. His health falters. The admiral, once sharp as a katana, battles stomach pains, perhaps ulcers from the stress. He tours forward bases, boosting morale among pilots at Rabaul, but the prophecy haunts him. Intercepted messages reveal his itinerary, thanks to MAGIC, the U.S. code-breaking operation. President Roosevelt approves Operation Vengeance, assassinate the architect of Pearl. On April 18, 1943, Yamamoto boards a G-4M Betty bomber from Rabaul, bound for Bougainville, escorted by Zeros. Major John Mitchell's P-38 Lightnings from Guadalcanal, 16 of them, intercept at low altitude, guided by precise intelligence. The ambush unfolds like a deadly ballet over the jungle canopy. You feel the G-forces as Lightnings dive, their .50 cows and 20mm cannons chattering. Yamamoto's Betty takes hits, flames trailing from an engine as it spirals into the trees. Captain Thomas Lanfear claims the kill, though debate rages. Perhaps Lieutenant Rex Barber's burst sealed it.
The escort Zeros tangle in dogfights, downing one P-38, but the Admiral's plane crashes in flames. Yamamoto's body later found strapped in his seat, sword at his side. News spreads like wildfire. Tokyo mourns in secret, promoting him posthumously to Marshal Admiral. In the U.S., headlines scream triumph. Yamamoto shot down. Morale soars, but the war grinds on. The Giants' advance accelerates. Island hopping under Nimitz and MacArthur, Tarawa's bloody beaches, where Marines wade through coral under pillbox fire, Kwajalein's atoll assaults with Amtrak's churning surf. Carriers multiply. By 1944, Task Force 58 under Admiral Mark Michener boasts 15 flat tops, launching Hellcats that sweep the skies in the Marianas Turkey Shoot, Zeros falling like autumn leaves. Yamamoto's successor, Admiral Minechi Koga, perishes in a plane crash, leadership fracturing. The Philippines fall in Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle ever. Japanese kamikazes debut, desperate dives into American decks, but Yamato's sortie ends in retreat, her sister, Musashi, sunk by waves of torpedoes. Okinawa in 1945 becomes the bloodiest, caves honeycombed with defenders, flamethrowers clearing bunkers amid typhoons of steel. Yamamoto's warning echoes in the halls of Tokyo, the industrial wrath unrelenting. B-29 superfortresses from the Marianas firebomb cities, LeMay's low-level raids turning wooden districts to ash, Tokyo incinerated in a single night, 100,000 dead. The Empire's doom seals with Enola Gay over Hiroshima, August 6th, a mushroom cloud erasing the city. Nagasaki follows. Emperor Hirohito broadcasts surrender on August 15th, the jewel voice cracking over radios. In the end, Yamamoto's prophecy fulfills in fire and ruin. From Pearl's ashes rose a colossus that crushed the rising sun. But as Allied ships steam into Tokyo Bay for the signing aboard USS Missouri, one wonders, could the Admiral, in his final moments plummeting through the canopy, have seen this fiery end?
In the smoke-shrouded dry docks of Pearl Harbor, welders' torches flare like defiant stars against the twisted steel of the sunken fleet. It's January 1942, and the salvage crews work around the clock, their hammers echoing through the night as they raise the USS California from the mud, patching holes with frantic urgency. You can smell the burning metal, hear the grind of cranes lifting debris, men in grease-streaked overalls driven by a fire hotter than the oil slicks still staining the water. Admiral Chester Nimitz, newly appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, stands on the dock, his jaw set, surveying the wreckage. "We'll fight with what we have," he declares to his staff, but in his eyes burns the promise of more. America's factories, those behemoths Yamamoto feared, roar to life. In Bremerton, Washington, the USS Yorktown, damaged in the Coral Sea skirmish, undergoes miraculous repairs, her flight deck rebuilt in weeks what should take months. Across the continent, the arsenal of democracy awakens with a vengeance. Henry Kaiser's shipyards in Richmond, California, churn out Liberty ships at a blistering pace, assembly lines humming with riveters and arc welders, women in bandanas stepping into roles once reserved for men. Ford's Willow Run plant in Michigan retools from cars to B-24 Liberators, producing a bomber every hour by mid-war. Steel from Pittsburgh, rubber from synthetic plants in Akron, the giant flexes its muscles. Enlistment surges, boot camps overflow with raw recruits from farms and cities, drilling with M1 Garans under barking sergeants. "Remember Pearl Harbor" becomes the rallying cry, plastered on posters, blaring from radios. Yamamoto's strike had unified a nation once divided by isolationism, turning grief into grim determination. Meanwhile, the Imperial Japanese Navy runs wild, just as Yamamoto predicted. In the Philippines, General Douglas MacArthur evacuates Corregidor under cover of night, vowing "I shall return," as Japanese forces under General Masaharu Hanma overrun Bataan.
Singapore falls in February, the Gibraltar of the East crumbling to bicycle infantry and bold flanking maneuvers. Dutch East Indies yield their oil fields, Burma their rice paddies. Japan's co-prosperity sphere expands like ink in water. Aboard the Yamato, the world's largest battleship, Yamamoto directs operations from Truk Lagoon, his combined fleet a juggernaut of carriers and cruisers. Zeros dominate the skies over Java Sea, sinking Allied ships in lopsided battles. But whispers reach him. American codebreakers at Station Hypo in Hawaii, led by Commander Joseph Rochefort, crack fragments of JN-25, the Japanese naval cipher. They piece together hints of ambitious plans, but Yamamoto presses on, eyeing Midway Atoll as the lure to draw out and destroy the remaining U.S. carriers. April brings a shock. From the deck of the USS Hornet, 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers lumber into the air under Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle, a daring raid on Tokyo itself. Bombs fall on factories in the Imperial Palace grounds, minimal damage but maximum humiliation. Air raid sirens wail through the streets, civilians scrambling to shelters as flames lick the skyline. Yamamoto, ashore for a meeting, feels the sting personally, his strategy exposed as incomplete. "This changes everything," he confides to his chief of staff, Rear Admiral Matome Ugaki. The raid galvanizes Japan but accelerates Yamamoto's timetable. He finalizes Operation MI, a massive assault on Midway, 1,000 miles northwest of Hawaii, to stretch American defenses and force a decisive battle. 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soiryu, Hiryu, under Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, screened by battleships and destroyers, steam toward destiny. Diversionary strikes on the Aleutians mask the main thrust, but Rochefort's team deciphers the target. AF is Midway. As May unfolds, U.S. carriers rally. Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher commands Task Force 17 with Yorktown, her Coral Sea wounds hastily mended in Pearl's dry docks, 72 hours of round-the-clock labor transforming her from cripple to combatant. Admiral Raymond Spruance takes Task Force 16 with Enterprise and Hornet, untested but eager. Pilots train relentlessly, dauntless dive bombers practicing steep descents, Wildcat fighters honing dogfight tactics against simulated Zeros. Nimitz gambles everything on intelligence, positioning his forces northeast of Midway, hidden by cloud cover and radio silence. Yamamoto's fleet, spread thin across 2,000 miles, sails into the trap. Aboard Akagi, Nagumo's flag waves confidently, his pilots, veterans of Pearl, sharpening torpedoes, fueling cates and valves. But Yamamoto, on Yamato, trailing far behind, nurses unease. Scouting reports are spotty. PBI Catalinas from Midway spot Japanese transports, but where are the American carriers? June 3, 1942. Dawn breaks over the vast Pacific, waves cresting under a hazy sky. Midway's marine defenders brace as Japanese bombers from Hiryu pound the atoll, sand strips erupting in geysers of coral and fire. AA guns bark back, downing a few Vals, but the island burns. Nagumo orders a second strike, arming planes for land targets again. Then a scout plane radios, American ships sighted. Chaos on the flight decks, rearmed torpedoes for ships. The indecision costs precious minutes. You can picture the sweat-soaked armorers hauling bombs below decks, fuel lines snaking across hangar bays. Spruance strikes first. Torpedo squadrons from Enterprise and Hornet launch, but Zeros swarm them like hornets, shredding devastators in fiery plunges. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron's Torpedo 8 is annihilated. Only Ensign George Gay survives, bobbing in the waves amid the carnage. But this sacrifice pulls the Zeros low. High above, dauntless squadrons from Enterprise, led by Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey, spot the Japanese carriers through a break in the clouds. They dive, screaming down at 70 degrees, bomb sights locked. Akagi takes a direct hit. Her deck erupts in flames, aviation fuel igniting like a torch. Kaga follows, multiple bombs shattering her hull. Soiryu twists under explosions, her elevators blown skyward. In minutes, 3 carriers are blazing infernos, crews abandoning ship as ammunition cooks off in thunderous blasts. Nagumo, transferred to a cruiser, stares in disbelief. Hiryu launches a counterstrike, crippling Yorktown with torpedoes and bombs. She lists heavily, fires raging, but American resolve holds. Dive bombers from Enterprise find Hiryu, sending her to the bottom with the others. Yamamoto, receiving fragmented reports on Yamato, feels the prophecy close in. 4 carriers lost in a day, the heart of his fleet gone. He orders a retreat, the Aleutian diversion meaningless now. Midway stands, the tide turns. But as the sun sets on sinking wrecks and floating survivors, a deeper doom whispers. America's giant, fully awake, will not sleep again. What final blow awaits the admiral who roused it?
Aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, September 2, 1945, the morning sun casts long shadows across the teak deck where Allied dignitaries gather in starched uniforms, the air thick with the scent of salt and surrender. General Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander, stands at the podium, his corncob pipe clenched as Japanese envoys in formal attire, Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu limping on a cane, approach the table laden with documents. Battleships and carriers ring the bay, a floating testament to the giant's might. Iowa, South Dakota, the British King George V. You can hear the faint snap of flags in the breeze, the murmur of interpreters as pens scratch across the instrument of surrender. These proceedings are closed, MacArthur intones, his voice carrying over loudspeakers to the fleet. 11 minutes, that's all it takes to end the bloodiest conflict in history. But the path to this moment was paved with the ashes of Yamamoto's vision. In the wake of his death, the Imperial Navy fractured, admirals like Jisaburo Ozawa throwing remnants into desperate gambits. At Leyte Gulf in October 1944, the largest naval engagement ever, over 200,000 men, 280 ships, Japan's carriers serve as decoys in Shogo, drawing Admiral William Bull Halsey's Third Fleet north, while Kurita's battleships slip through San Bernardino Strait. Yamamoto, her 18-inch guns silent too long, steams into the fray, but Taffy 3's destroyers, tiny tin cans like USS Johnston, charge with torpedoes and 5-inch fire, bluffing a force 10 times their size. Aircraft from escort carriers strafe and bomb, turning the tide in a David and Goliath melee. Kurita withdraws, haunted by ghosts of fuel shortages and imagined traps. 4 Japanese carriers sunk, the fleet eviscerated. Yamamoto's prophecy in steel and smoke. The home islands reel under the giant's hammer. From bases in the Marianas, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, seized in brutal assaults where Marines root out caves with grenades and bulldozers, B-29s under General Curtis LeMay launch fire raids. March 9th to 10th, 1945, Operation Meeting House blankets Tokyo in incendiaries, winds whipping flames into a firestorm that boils canals and melts streets. Over 100,000 civilians perish in one night, more than Hiroshima's initial toll. LeMay's low-altitude tactics, stripping bombers of guns for more bombs, turn cities like Osaka, Nagoya, Kobe to char. If we'd lost the war, LeMay later reflects, I'd have been tried as a war criminal. But necessity drives the machine. Japan's refusal to yield, even as submarines strangle supply lines, wolf packs like those under Admiral Charles Lockwood sinking merchants at will. Kamikazes emerge as the Empire's last gasp, divine winged pilots crashing into decks off Okinawa. April to June 1945, the 82-day battle claims 12,500 Americans, 110,000 Japanese, civilians caught in crossfire, leaping from cliffs in mass suicides. USS Bunker Hill burns under impacts, her crew fighting flames amid exploding ordnance. Yamamoto's final sortie, Operation 10 Go, ends in apocalypse. Swarmed by 386 aircraft from Task Force 58, she takes 10 torpedoes and 7 bombs, rolling over in a massive detonation, 3,000 souls lost. The Giant's carriers, now unopposed, project power unchallenged, Hellcats and Corsairs ruling the skies. Then the atomic age dawns. August 6, 1945, Colonel Paul Tibbets pilots Enola Gay from Tinian, releasing Little Boy over Hiroshima at 8:15 a.m. A flash brighter than the sun, shockwave flattening miles, 70,000 dead instantly. 3 days later, Boxcar drops Fat Man on Nagasaki, another 40,000 gone. Radiation sickness claims more in agonizing weeks. Hirohito, in his first radio address, cites a new and most cruel bomb as reason for capitulation, sparing the horror of invasion, Operation Downfall, with its projected 1,000,000 casualties. Soviet entry into Manchuria seals it, Kwantung Army crumbling. In reflection, Yamamoto's words resonate like a dirge. The Harvard alumnus, poker aficionado, had glimpsed America's soul, its ingenuity, its resolve. Pearl Harbor, meant to neutralize, instead forged an unbreakable will. From Kaiser's shipyards birthing vessels weekly to Willow Run's bomber an hour miracle, the industrial wrath he feared consumed his nation. Today, memorials stand. Arizona's rusted turret in Pearl, Yamamoto's museum in Kure. Lessons linger in strategy tomes, warnings against underestimating foes. As Missouri's deck clears that September day, flyovers roar, 500 aircraft symbolizing dominance. The sleeping giant, once roused, reshaped the world. But at what cost to humanity's slumber?